Hello, everyone joining from the internet. This is Mark Michael, CEO and co-founder of DevHub, joined by.
Eric, lead web dev at DevHub.
Okay, let's get into it. Remote work versus being in office, right? Okay, Eric, I'm just going to tell the story that I tell,
Okay.
right? A couple weeks, a couple months before the pandemic, right? Everyone at that time at DevHub was like, we want Eric in the office 5 days a week. But because you were commuting, we settled on 3. Of those 3, there was always somebody sick. The railroad track, a tree fell on the railroad track. The dog, shit everywhere. I mean, I had a list for a long time keeping track of why you couldn't make full 3 days, right? So then we met with you, Daniel and I, other co-founder at DevHub. We met with you and we're like, you better be in this fucking office 3 days a week, right? Boom, pandemic. The point of that story is I tell everyone I sweat about that because that was the mentality then. We're now, 3-ish, 4 years-ish past that point. And again, Amazon's announcement last week or a couple weeks ago saying 5 days a week starting January 2nd, everyone needs to be in the office. I penned a little essay on my own little personal site, in my humble opinion, that either companies need to be all in or basically no policy to be in the office, right? Because I think even 3 days never allows anyone to create a full routine anyway, because life just happens potentially in those 3 days. So it's either you're all in or you're all out. And again, every company is different based on, what they're trying to get done and whatnot. And so for us, obviously, our policy at this moment in time is fully remote, even though we do have physical offices. Go ahead. That's my take on work from
That's
home.
good.
Yeah, go.
I thought this would be a fun conversation, right? Because that changed. I kind of brought up in the last video. Obviously, you have a unique story that directly involves me. This is probably a conversation you and I have had ever since I started here.
Yeah.
And, my argument, at least from the worker side, is yes, when I called in sick, it just meant I wanted to work from home because the commute sucks sometimes. It can be a drag, especially as someone like me when I've had kids, very young kids. Uh, I needed to stay home more, basically, because my wife works in the medical profession. She absolutely cannot work from home. You know what I mean? Because of what she does direct with patients, right? So, in my relationship, those are kind of the decisions I had to make personally, right? Like, I didn't want to not work to some extent, but I also don't want to go into the office. It's like, and personally, I found my productivity to be higher when I stay home because I'm, at least in my mind, again, you have it's a deal between you and I, right? Where like you let me work from home, but I don't let productivity slip. I'm still available. I'm still, I'm still working for you, right? To some extent.
Yeah. And
Uh,
real quick, as you're talking, I pulled up some of the excuses that you had. Uh,
okay, you can read them at the end. Save
I
them
mean,
for the
yeah, it's like, are you in the office? No, I said no. They said, no, I'll be in tomorrow. Again, this is by 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
I'm not feeling
Yeah.
good.
You know, we had a baby appointment. I had to take the wife. I'm like, noted. Okay, cool. It looks like that was okay, 2019. Very sick today, working from home. Hey, I'm not
From
feeling
home.
well
I'm
at
not taking a
all.
sick day.
Yeah, my
I'm
whole
working
family.
from home.
Oh, this one. My whole family woke up sick. Hey, I don't feel great today with the fever. I'm just gonna stay home today and come in the rest of the week. Hey, I have a baby doctor appointment this morning. We'll be working from home and unavailable from the. Sorry, guys. I've been puking all morning. Still not feeling good. Hey, so I got some sort of stomach flu over the weekend. It did not work. I mean, again, and it was just like basically you. I mean, I calculate. And I was like discussing on Monday, meeting with Eric on Monday, July 31st, this 2017, discussing Eric's tone with clients via email. Eric, I'm feeling very sick today. We'll be working from home. Yeah, I'll head out at lunch again. But also, your issue too was always like you would say, like you're coming in, so I get excited for the record, and then you wouldn't come in, and that's
No,
what
that's good.
always created up and down. It's like the best thing I think someone can do is like just don't say anything. And so, sorry
Well,
guys.
you can't say nothing. See, that's where obviously we're on the be obvious. You're not being obvious. I think if I would have been more honest and be like, hey, I'm going to work from home today because I need this other stuff. And I would say after the pandemic, that's a much more honest conversation that at least people who can do their work from home can have with their employer in
So
a sense that you could never do it before. Because again, we all have lives, we all have to plan things, we all have doctor's appointments or kids things to do or school things. Uh, and the problem with like work from the office in my mind is always it never supported that. And like you had to take the time off. And it's like, well, I don't want to take time off. I just need like this 2 hours. I still can do my work. You know what I mean? And that was always where I can, because you can point to all that, but would you say my productivity was ever down in a lot of sense during those times? Because
yeah,
that's where, to me, it was,
my two
yeah, it was
questions.
always a commute, honestly.
My
Not the
my
work.
two my two questions. I just wrote them down as you were talking to. Is one, do you ever think though you're missing some element of, I mean, humanity or
Absolutely.
culture or socially, just like again, again, friends with colleagues. I don't know how like maybe that works necessarily, but again, just in general though, just like the camaraderie, like is how big of an element or how important is that, do you think, for, let's just call it the remote class?
I
Like,
mean, it depends on where you are in life. Like I have 2 young kids right now. Like that is the most draining part of everything to me outside of work. You know what I mean? And so I don't necessarily have all the ability to like put into those other kinds of things.
you know,
Uh, but like I will say, like I before I always wanted it to be hybrid because I just wanted some flexibility of like not doing an hour and a half commute every day. To and from work that either have to have a car with gas. There for a while. I didn't have to have a car, and things like that. So all those things like add up like financially, which is always nice. It's just an extra bonus essentially for the employee. Uh, but yeah,
I like
I did miss people. I do miss people. After COVID, it really hit me, and that's where I talk about it now, where like it's a treat to go into the office, right? That's like it feels more of like a vacation than it did like, oh my God, I gotta go to the office, today or whatever, to do my work or whatever that I can do now at home. So
explain, like, again, as I guess in some respect, like as DevHub is growing, right, there's different personalities. Like back in the day when there's 7 of us, it's a lot different than when there's 30, almost 40-ish, whatever. Like, and again, I hear from sometimes the other end where it's like, I am so lonely at home, right? But like
yep,
you, and again, like to your point, the stages of life, I believe in that, right? Like in the, if someone joining us in their 20s, they just want to make money, they don't, they don't care. Got it. And then the person who has 2 kids now, it's totally different in terms of what they want for that, again, cliche work-life balance, I guess. But like how, like what is, like how do you say, like someone who, why does remote work, I guess? And not
that's a
just
good
for you,
question.
like if you had to like generalize it, like why does it actually work? Because again, we had interns this summer, right? And they wanted to be in the office as much as possible, right? Like because they want to be in the office, and so
That's
you
what they're
know
used to at school, I guess,
that's
in
true.
a sense. You know, I think it works personally. Again, I just like anything else, you have to, like I talked about earlier, like you have to make the promises to yourself of like, I will check my Slack. I will, organize my time to get the work that I need done that day. I will be available when people need me for questions, right? Like they would if they walked up to my desk at the office. You have to, in my mind, you still have to have that mentality that someone should be able to walk up to your office or desk and be available to you. Whether that's just to connect on a call like you would at the water cooler or any other way, or just to get the work done. You just, and as we figure that, because a lot of it I think is just growing in communication, right? That we're learning is like, how do you communicate effectively? Because working from home, it's a different communication style, right? Most people, when they communicate from home in the past, is like, you know, it's their leisure time. It's kind of a weirder kind of, that's when you're doing social media or other types of things. Where like, now, no, like, I'm not in my Discord with my friends. I'm in my Slack with my work people and doing it that way, at least from my perspective on that. And it's not for everyone. And I will say at some point it does grind on you from a loneliness standpoint. Absolutely. I like I said, I loved coming to the office last week. I love, randomly doing it. But would I want to do that every day? No. Do I think that would actually affect my productivity? Absolutely, because I'm answering questions with people on the East Coast at 8 a.m. where I'd be stuck on a busy train with no internet because there's 100 people packed in multiple cars. Like it doesn't work when the train is full like that.
Can you tell if your colleagues are phoning it in?
Uh, yes and no. That's, I mean, God, don't put me on the spot like that. But no, again, I think everyone, again, it's about recognizing how other people do it. One thing I really love, a shout out to one of our new hires, Brian, but he started putting a little home. I have always done like the icons, but he started putting the home icon in his Slack, and I just always assume like he's gone. He's home. You'll see him. You might see him on, but like he's not available anymore. And that just always clicked with me. Again, that communication, even as simple as an icon on your Slack, communicates to other people stuff that can be helpful, or just they might need to know. And it's just a different communication style that people need to learn. You now have, if you work from home, you you're expected, and like in my mind, there's some expectation of like when you should return. uh if you are not on break and you are like on working hours, like you should respond to someone ideally within 15 minutes. If you're not in a meeting or anything like that, like, somebody should be able to get a response. Now it can be hard sometimes because you get like answering like 100 different messages and 100 different spots, depending on where you're at. But there again, expectations of, if
But
you want to work from home, you have that responsibility to still do your work.
like, I
We're not
guess, yeah,
good.
like how I feel, and this is a question I think, but I don't know. You tell me. It's something lately I've been feeling like more Slack, like a Slack message to a colleague is like Morse code, right? Where I'm sending like beep 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 beep, beep, and then I'm sitting there waiting for a response. Whether you said 15 minutes, like 15 minutes to be waiting for like maybe the most mundane question, but only that person has the answer. Is
Well, that's
where
where you have to
where I feel like
suspend
that
your expectation.
productivity gets lost, right? Is like that waiting 15 minutes, and sometimes it's not 15 minutes, it's an hour, it could be 3, and it's just like why did I have to wait that long to get, versus prior days, right? Like, yo, what are you doing right now? What's this thing that I need to do? Like I can just walk over and say the thing or ask the thing, and that's like to me what sometimes just kills me is like this like idea, wait.
And that's a really good point, because there is an element then of like, well, what if I'm doing work, right? Like I'm doing work during when you're reaching out to me. Because like me and many others, I get locked in, baby. We lock it in, and if I'm not locked in completely to some of the stuff that I'm doing, I'm either gonna make mistakes, think bad stuff's gonna happen, whatever. So I have to lock it in and I have to get it done. And that's why I always fought for like blocked hours on the calendar of like, look, you can message me, but like don't expect an answer because I'm working right now on whatever, right? And so again, it's about the expectations that are set about availability. It's a balance, it's a responsibility. I mean, it goes both ways on, there's a responsibility on the employee side to like be there when needed, but then a spot on the employer side of like understanding, what work needs to be done, what is available, are they in a meeting? I mean, there's all sorts of different things. I mean, I jump into different huddles all the time, because that's how I have someone's undivided attention in a lot of sense, and it's just easier to get stuff done. Once I huddle, it feels like I'm in person at that point. Um, and I would say a lot of that comes from the streaming culture, at least I always think of or watch or came up through is like, now we're on a stream together, we can share our screen, we can work through the problem together, et cetera, et cetera. I just find that to be infinitely even more helpful than it is in person. Like plugging my computer around to somebody to show them something instead I can just like share my screen and we can work through the problem. There I just don't see a lot of difference between like what I do at this desk versus what I do at the desk at the office in a lot of sense. There's no clear distinction between that. So therefore, it's not about being in the office that gets the work done. It's about the productivity that gets the work done. That's where I think that's where like when people were forced to work from home, it really peeled back that layer of like, you either have to go into work to do your work or you don't. And if you don't, then now you have all those other questions of like, well, again, my commute time, especially in a busy city, that takes a long time depending on where you live, especially if you have to move way out of town to afford housing or something. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where there just has to be a balance, I think, to it. And to your point, whether it's like all or nothing. I mean eh, and that's where I guess I'm getting back to in the end is it is all or nothing. You either have to do your work from the office or you don't. And if you don't, then you need to consider how remote office work is like the future for you. And I think it technically unlocks a lot. I mean, we've hired so many good, amazing people because we can get people from everywhere, and they do their work that isn't required to be in an office to do. If they need to travel, obviously, sales and things like that's different. But uh, in general, the people that we have, because even our clients are, across the country, and us in particular, right? Like, not all of our clients are in Seattle. Most companies' clients probably are a global or at least, countrywide. So, like, there's always going to be that element of that kind of, online communication. So I don't know. You might as well just lean into it if that's all you're doing. So
One selfish question, and I'm asking. It's going to sound like a statement, but I think I am asking, right? Which is, I especially this last 3 years, call it 20, not so much 2020 because we're all kind of just staying in place, but 2021, 2022, 2023, and I guess today, is like I always felt guilty in the sense that if I wasn't in the office for the company, that, like in theory, like the company thinks less, right? Like, oh, well, if he's not in the office, then like, why do we care? Even if we're remote, by the way, like, then why do we care? Oh, he's in Arizona, he's whatever. And I remember one time, I think I asked you or somebody at DevHub or a couple of you at DevHub, you're like, we genuinely never think about you. And the reason why I say that out loud is purely like for, again, fellow co-founders, whatever, like, again, there is like a weird, like, I need to be at the office, and again, like, even for me, where the hell were we recently? Oh, I was in Maine and I flew home a day early because we had to deal with some stuff, because I was like, I need to be at the office to do this thing. But again, like, does it make any difference if leadership is in the office or not in the office if it is a remote culture?
I don't know. Again, to me, at least what I focus on the most is the work, right? And all my work happens through the browser, in a lot of sense already. So it's already just like a comfort thing there. And yeah, I don't think about who's in the office or whether management's in the office or not per se. Uh
Does
just because
any
again,
people do
but
or
I
no?
still feel because that's the thing is like now, because you had mentioned it, because I kind of asked when we were in the office last week, and you said, we basically moved to like completely remote, right? And I think once you have that mentality, I still feel connected to everyone throughout the company, just as I would whether we were in the office or not, you know? And it feels, and it makes those in-person interactions, especially as we bring people across the country together, like even more special in some sense. Uh, because like for me, I live far away from all my family members. So like when we all get together, it's very special. So it's kind of that sense of it too. I still am connected to those family members through online connections, through the phone or whatever. And when we get together, it's special. I think treating remote work like that is fine too. Again, it's just a kind of a transition. It's a mentality mind shift. And I also just think that there's just a lot of benefits generally. Like, again, the less people going into offices, the less people that are on the roads. So therefore, it's less traffic for the people who have to go into the office. This is, again, where I speak for my wife in a sense, where like Amazon making their employees go back to the office now makes the traffic hell for everyone else that has to go into the office, and so but again, then there's the economic side of it, right? Of like how important those people going to the office is for, businesses, coffee shops, especially, and all that sort of stuff. Uh, so there is a balance there. But to me personally, I think it shifts the economies where like what I would spend in Seattle, I spend it here where I live in Puyallup. And if anything, it makes my economy more local to where I live. Which is, good, but I don't know. I don't know what kind of incentives Amazon has with the city of Seattle for tax breaks on
Yeah.
heads in the office.
I mean, how I dealt with these last 3.5, whatever it is, years of us kind of in this weird remote hybrid, whatever the hell, has been like, I'm like, as long as everyone is happy, like life wise, like I need to be okay with that, right? Like as long as you're happy, like I'm okay with that, right? And so again, obviously the question is like, are you more happy remote?
Yeah, I
Like,
agree.
duh. Or
Yeah.
like,
Well,
or is it like 51-49? Or is it like what is like the rate? Like what would be like that? I guess that's a good question. And what is that ratio of like,
to me, it's just a very simple answer of the commute, right? Like if I could just be at the office and home, like like I could walk downstairs and be in the office.
yeah, but
Yeah,
like
I get, but you know what I mean? Because it's the commute side of it that is
in
always
all
the biggest factor in the equation.
in 17 years of DevHub, you remember, I tried to convince everyone to live as close to the office as possible because it's mindless in terms of a commute. I mean, I live across the street. Like I literally just roll out of bed, 10 minutes, or be in the office, and like start, and like if I forgot anything, I can go grab. Like I never think about getting to the office. But again, I mean, you saw the people over all the years, like you did it for a while,
Yeah, for a year.
like, yeah. And it's like, but no one, I mean, again,
I never called in then. It's fun. You know what I mean? It's a fine experience.
right. But again,
But
like,
it's not a forever thing. It's
right.
hard. Especially, I would say, and this is where it's like it also depends on where your office is in a lot of sense. Like having your office in downtown of
Yeah,
a
but we have
major
people in
metro.
West Seattle, which you can say the commute is not that much. You can say like, up, North Seattle, even still Seattle,
Right.
but north. Like again, like that's all still some version of a commute. I mean, again, look, I lived in Queen Anne, which was like not even a mile or two from the office. To take the bus was 45 minutes.
Yep.
Like that was just to me insane because like you're literally looking at the peak of our office building, and then like we never got any closer because we stopped everywhere along the way. I mean, that was just to me the most nuts. Even living in Pioneer Square from the office, that's close. But like also like, are you really gonna kind of walk uphill every day? And then if it's raining, like, so it was like to me the best was like within like 3-4 blocks of the office. But I can never convince any of that. But again, ultimately, as long as you are happy and everyone
I
else
mean,
is happy,
but I want to get your perspective. Like, do you think it's good for business, right? Because I see this dichotomy now in Seattle between Amazon who says yes, and Microsoft who's like, nah.
Yeah, no, I
Like,
think Microsoft has been
right?
trying. I think Microsoft has been trying to say yes, but they've just been really, really, really like people are just they're doing it too slow. I think again, what I'll be again, don't forget, Amazon's thing doesn't supposedly happen until like I think January
Next.
2nd. So again, like, and that's like a hard one, right? Like you better be in. Again, like I don't want to get into like AI and stuff like that. I do think there will be a lot of efficiencies. These tech companies will print even more money that they can do more with less of a workforce. Um, and so again, to me, like the first analogy of Morse code, right? Beep, 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 on Slack, and then getting like a message 15 minutes later when I could have like gotten it like in 2 seconds. Like again, when I work in the office with at least Daniel, our co-founder, like I'm like Daniel, da, 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 and he's like, oh yeah. I'm like, or what are your feelings or thoughts on this? Da, 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 da. Like we're able to like just do it and I get to move on with my life. The other part is again, sometimes I think like this screen, as soon as people like get off, like shut the laptop, it's like kind of out of sight, out of mind. Like how connected are they to again what we're actually trying to do? And I feel like we've quadrupled, and again, you tell me this part. I feel like we've quadrupled like trying to stay on message so that it really resonates. We're going after this market, we're going after this market, we're going after this market, we're going from partner to brand direct, we're going from partner to brand direct, we're going from, like it feels like we're almost like instead of like being in an office, this is my theory, instead of being in an office where you like feel it, like, oh, okay, like this is what we're doing now. It's like I feel like there's some level of like over communicating, and then I'll still find, I mean, what we found as we kind of uncovered some stuff on the other part of the company was like, again, we're doing all this team enablement stuff that are related to our product. Like, how many people like across this company like don't know exactly what the product actually does? And it's like, wait, you don't know? And again, maybe that's a training thing on our end. And again, we're solving it for a lot of that stuff. But it's just amazing, like because we're moving, how someone would not know what DevHub is solving for, even though they've been here for 3, 6, 9 months, is like, where did that get lost? Like in all these meetings and all these things, like how did you not know? And again, I will say I blame some of it on vocabulary. Like I think all of us use the same different words for the same meaning. But beyond that, like there's something missing that like you don't get when you're together. And again, I think that's been the hard part to, for company leaders to basically be like, what is that thing? And again, like I like if I had known anything, the 3-day, the 4-day that you come in when you want doesn't work. Because again, there's no schedule to it. So it's like every day you like don't know. And so when it's full, like Amazon's full 5 days, it clicked. I was like, okay, it's all or nothing. Done. Like, and so that's kind of, again, there is something missing. I don't think anyone's been able to articulate it in a way that makes sense for you, for me, for everybody, that says this is why you should come in. It's always like this loose thing, like we're better when we collaborate together. We want to move fast if we're together. Like, and everyone's like, yeah, but I'm efficient at home. I'm, whatever, like whatever those other things that
I
come
mean,
up.
in the end, your work should speak for itself. In a lot of sense, that's how I've always
Yeah.
approached
But
things.
again,
In
like
a lot of sense, again, if I
perfect.
need to show up to do that
Plug
work,
this into your head. But like the work should speak for itself, but the context of how that work fits within the larger org is, I think, the part that is missing when we're all together. Or no?
I mean, I just don't see that, I guess,
Really?
personally.
Yeah.
No, because again, that's just a lot of, setting the employer setting the expectations and the employee being responsible to meet those expectations, right?
What
And I
is it?
think that's what we're learning with like the communication side of it all of like, this is what you're responsible for. You got to do it. You need to communicate when it doesn't make sense or something isn't obvious. Uh, the obvious level is always,
What?
I don't the big focus.
Like I'm playing the other
Because
side.
like things can be confusing in person or online. I don't think that there's anything uniquely about being in person versus being online that makes doing at least, web development or any sort of like, even just like, I don't know, at most jobs could be done on a computer technically from like a technical standpoint. So I don't know. Is it again, is it that the society needs to shift, that this is the new normal and we need to find better ways of doing it, or go back to the office? And to me, it's, well, like if you need to be in the office, again, if you're building something or you are actively working in person with people doing something like a service, then like obviously you have to be there. But if you're not doing those things, you can do your work online. The question should be, how do you make it so we're delivering whatever we're doing online better, right? We build websites. How do we build websites better while communicating to each other and the client online? And I think it's such a new thing that isn't solved yet. And people, we are having the debate of whether it's right or wrong, or like which way's better. And it's more of like, well, we just need to find more efficiencies for when this is the case, I guess.
Like
Right.
to your earlier point of, again, we were able to attract, really smart talent from elsewhere, East Coast, Midwest, whatnot. For us at our size, call it under 40 people, like it was like, it's not fair is where I also used to go. Like, okay, just because you live within 30 minutes of Seattle, you have to come into the office now, when 40-50% of our people are Midwest, East Coast now, and there's no office over there. So just because you don't live near the office, you get to be remote. But if you live near the office, you have to come in. Like, to me, like that always felt, again, like not fair, for lack of a better word. Like, so there was never a way, once we started going down that, because again, prior to the pandemic, I was like, oh, you're not in Seattle? Yeah, no, next. You're not in Seattle? Okay, can't, no, we want you to be in Seattle. We want you to come to the office, And then now it's like, oh, you're where? Oh, I'm in Texas. Oh, cool. How's Texas? Like, and so it just like, it totally shifted. But again, I still, one of my, I said I miss the pulse of, again, business and people in the city and in the office. That was very much a part of, I don't know, just like the culture of everything, not just the culture of the company, but like the culture, like you're living in a city, like I'm going to work with my colleagues, who is a different part of my life, and now it's like, there's not that. So it's just like, I'm home. And like, like, yeah, I have you, and, sometimes, we'll chat, whatever, I get it. But still, it's not like there's the randomness of like what happens in a day when you're in an office, versus this is pretty predictable every single day. I mean, pretty damn predictable.
I mean, I always, my escape is gaming, right? And so I game from the same computer that I work on. So therefore, you know, I'm at my computer for an unhealthy amount of time during a day, right? And so like is that like mentally healthy for me? Absolutely not, probably. I feel it sometimes of like, oh, I'm trapped in this room, right? Of work. Um, but again, that is me then needing to recognize like, well then
So,
go touch grass, dude. You know what I mean? Like get outside, go do other things that are away from the computer,
so
to have that healthy balance. Where going into the office, again, the commute can be good and bad, where like it pulls you out of that, but it's also just like a slog that costs money and time, and that's
I will,
all.
I'll say for
Can't
me,
get that back.
having been like a very hardliner in terms of like being in the office, when I'm like I was in the office for the last 3 months, right? Summer in Seattle. Every single day, if I wasn't in doing some weekend thing nearby Seattle, but basically all 5 days, every single day in the office. Sometimes on the Saturday, just cause. But nonetheless, like sometimes during those 5 days, Monday through Friday, I felt trapped. right? Because I'm there, like, and again, I'm living in a condo. Like, what am I going to do? Just go back to the, like, it was like, and again, like, you're there from, call it 7:30, 8:30, 9 till, call it like 5, 6,
Yeah.
whatever it is nowadays. And again, for me, like, it's, you're kind of always on anyway, but forget it. Just for purely, like, it just felt like I was like, I told Daniel, I was like, my ass hurts. All I'm doing is just sitting here. Like, this is nuts. At least when I'm here or potentially elsewhere soon, it's like there's like, I don't know, like you can like kind of move around. You have the freedom to like think, and like just move versus like when I'm in the office, it feels very much nowadays in any long continuous span. Again, 3 months was a lot, I think. It just felt very just again like you said, the word trap. That's what triggered this. Because that's how I felt. I was like trapped. Even now, when people come in, I think I've said it to you. I've said it to I said to a couple other people. Like, use the office as like almost a transient space. Like, use it. Come in. Again, you might be harder because you're 30 minutes away. Whatever, I get it. But still, like, don't be just because you came here. Don't feel stuck here. Like, oh, I came in at 9. I'm going to leave at 5. I'm like, come in at 9, leave at 12. Like, keep it pushing now. Like, like touch and go. Like, unless you need those hours, cool. Fuck, yeah, of course, stay all you want. But yeah, I mean, again, that idea of trapped is definitely a real thing.
Oh yeah. And that's where, again, I don't know, it just all comes down to your mentality. And
How
again,
often do you buy a chair?
I mean, I've held on to this one for a few. It's more, obviously work from home tips, right? Like standing desk is mandatory, I
You
would
have a standing
say.
desk?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I'm
think.
sitting at it, right? But
Uh,
I should be standing. I try and stand at least a little bit every day. Uh, and then again, it's about getting outside, going and walking. Just like, again, because I will say that the one, I would say the biggest downside that I feel with working from home is it's hard to then unplug, right? Because the office allows you that space of like when you're at the office, you're at the office. When you're not at the office, you're not at the office. Now, I think it's hard now when you're always kind of on, again, checking Slack at like 9 p.m., 7 a.m., 6 a.m., like well before technical work hours, right? Just one, keeping up with people in different time zones or whatever. And sometimes you feel a little overwhelmed, I would say, in general, by how often it feels like you need to be on. You know what I mean? So,
is it
but,
Daniel?
but even then, but it'll never disconnect. So now that this is a thing, even going back on the office to me won't make my working from home any less. I'll still have to do that time, even if I was in the office, because employers will not want to let that go in a sense of like, well, no, I still need to be able to contact you at any minute of the day, any day, to answer something, and therefore, if that's the case, then I don't need to be in the office anymore, right?
Like I
So,
said, I mean, if Daniel, our co-founder, my business partner, he says we're 15% more efficient at home.
all right, I
That's
believe
what he,
that.
I mean, that's what he says. And so, like, again, like, but of course, I default to the humanity side of this whole thing. Like, what are we missing by not like being together? And again, like I said, my default for the last 3+ years has been like, as long as you guys are happy, like as long as the decision to work from home is what makes you guys happy, then okay. As long as we're efficient and you're understanding where we're going and all of the things that it takes, like I'm cool with it. Like I just had to have been cool with it, you know? And so,
I
yeah.
think you'll know. I think most businesses in general will know when it's not working. You'll either see it through productivity drops or just other factors that it'll just be obvious that it's not working to some extent. But again, is that because of the remote, or it's again like things are not clearly defined, like what is expected of you in this remote lifestyle, et cetera, et cetera?
All right. So
Yeah.
let's say if we're going to wrap this up, how do we wrap it up? There's no
I want,
answer.
I
All
want you
right.
to read more of my excuses.
I have a spreadsheet somewhere. Again, there was the
I
tree
remember.
tracks. There was a dog.
I mean, some of those are legit. Like I legit, and you said half hour. It takes me, I mean, it's a 50-minute train ride onto either a half-hour walk or a 10-minute light rail ride plus a 5-minute walk, plus just the driving down to the station. So it takes me about an hour and 15 minutes from where I am. Now it's a lot easier now because Yala built like a new parking garage. Again, there's a lot of support, I would say, at least in big city remote work versus uh, you know, rural work or remote, like depending on what kind of traffic you're dealing with. I mean, there's all sorts of different scenarios in general. I just always think that commute, right? And like, what is your commute versus what is the trade-off and, drop off in productivity that person gets from that? That just giving them that time back, makes them happier, right? You're talking about happiness, right? Like anyone getting that kind of time back that like, to spend doing, taking care of my kids or whatever, taking them to and from school, the bus stops, being able to do that kind of stuff that I wouldn't be able to do if I had to leave at 7 a.m. in the morning to go downtown, and then get back at 7 at night because I'm adding, an hour and a half commute there and back every time, every day. I mean, it really, in the end, when you add up that time, if you don't need to do that, like, why would you want to?
Right.
You know what I mean?
I mean, overall, basically what you're saying is DevHub is the greatest place to work.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are doing a great job of learning how to work remotely. We've decided that we are a remote company and we're running into the same headaches that any other company might, where, just lack of communication or vision or, just that cohesiveness that, maybe having in-office meetings are more effective than an all Slack meeting, I guess.
But bringing people together like we do at least twice a year, you think that's enough fuel?
I think that's mandatory, truly.
Yeah.
It
is mandatory.
Yeah, absolutely. Mandatory from just like the business sense and in employee side. I mean, I think it is important to interact with your other coworkers to know that like everyone's real. This is all real, because again, I'm being online, it can feel a little weird, again, or different than what we've experienced our whole lives. Again, to me, this is more of a turning point than like, a negative thing. It's just a change that we're all trying to get used to, right? And the important interactions are just as important as our online interactions, and how we manage those now through like the work environment is important. And you need to care about it and think about it. And how do you improve it? How do we make it better? How do we, yeah, because it all comes down to communication in the end, I think.
That's a great summary. Communication.
All about communication.
Cool. All right. That was remote and in-office discussion. Mark Michael and
Eric Willis.
Eric
Thanks,
Willis.
Mark.
All right. See you.
See you online.
Yeah.
Bye, Mark.